Need for Speed The Run is one of the more polarizing games in the Need for Speed series. In one camp are the naysayers who criticize the game's short length, cliché story, and highly scripted racing. In the other camp are all the smart people who recognize that the rule of cool reigns supreme and that this game gets away with its shortcomings because it is cool. I'm not going to pretend to subscribe to the collective psychosis that has consumed the Need for Speed community. The criticism that this game gets is disproportionate to its weaknesses, and while no game is immune to criticism, and the run definitely has its share of weak points, it's clear to me that the volume of nitpicks come down to the fact that this game isn't Need for Speed Most Wanted. It's the Pro Street effect all over again, but where Pro Street still gave players a racing game for racing game fans, the run is a racing game for action game fans, and sorry car brains, but it delivers. This is Need for Speed The Run. Starting the game, you get a brief character bio for Jack Rourke, the game's protagonist. Jack is a driver, one of the best. His cockiness and arrogance have led him into a debt that he can't repay. The mob have put a price on his head. He's looking for a way out. We then get some cinematic shots of a Porsche Carrera before cutting to Jack, eyes closed. Jack slowly opens his eyes and looks around, trying to get a sense of where he is. Where he is duct taped to the steering wheel of the Carrera, which is about to be dropped into a compactor. When the magnetic crane releases the Porsche, we watch Jack fall in slow motion to his presumed imminent death, with two men looking on. The vehicle lands in the compactor and the machine is activated, pinning the Porsche against the sidewall. A series of QuickTime events allow Jack to escape. Like most, I am generally opposed to QuickTime events, but I actually don't mind them here. They're never a surprise. If action is happening in a cutscene, there will be QuickTime events, so you're always prepared. They usually lean into button mashing more than reaction time, so in my opinion, they're complementary to the game's intense moments. More than anything else, you would never expect them in a racing game, and I love novelty, so at the risk of being hanged, I like that they're here. Jack drops to the ground beside the compactor and takes off. The two men watching the would-be execution notice that Jack has escaped and pursue him as he gets into the Audi RS4. Jack peels out and the player takes over. It's kind of a trope at this point for me to talk about the first time that the player takes over, but it's warranted because the Need for Speed series consistently uses this moment to give the player a sense of what the game will be like. And what's the run going to be like? How about fucking rad? Navigating the junkyard while being pursued by the mob is such a sick premise. Jack owes them money, they want Jack dead, and they're willing to go to extreme lengths to make that happen, including trying to run him off the road and gun him down on a public street. Jack has to juggle evading the mob, dodging traffic, and making his way through the city while attempting to escape. Bullets rain down, roadside canisters explode, and as Jack approaches a set of train tracks, so too does the train. Jack manages to narrowly avoid a collision with the train, escaping to safety with his pursuer stuck on the other side of the tracks. Flash forward, Jack walks into a Chinese restaurant where he meets up with Sam, a longtime friend. Sam tells Jack that she's heard that he has gotten himself into trouble, and she offers a solution.
You know I can help you straighten that out.
And my end?
What you do best. What you do better than anyone. Right now. Yes or no?
You knew the answer before I even walked to the door.
Sam describes a race from San Francisco to New York. If Jack wins, she'll handle his problem and give Jack a 10% cut of the winnings. After some quick arithmetic, Jack is satisfied with the offer, and the duo begin to prepare. Cue title card. Next up is selecting the car with which Jack will begin his run. Unlike other games in the series, your options for your first car aren't shitboxes. Far from it, in fact. You'll be selecting between an M3 GTS, a Fairlady 240Z, and a GT500. I think this makes sense as a design decision. This game isn't about coming up from nothing. It's not about proving yourself. Jack is already a badass. Need for Speed The Run is a legitimately innovative attempt at making a game that is equal parts racing and action-adventure. Starting with a high-powered car makes sense, and it fits the game's overall intent. Jack sits in the newly selected car while Sam lays out the situation for him. 3,000 miles and about 200 other racers stand between him and $2.5 million, and it's time to hit the road. Jack pulls out of the garage and heads towards the race start in Nob Hill. This is the point where it really set in for me how good this game looks. Look, I love the aesthetics in Most Wanted and Carbon. I think Pro Street looks ridiculously good for its time. Even Undercover technically has graphics, but none of them hold a candle to The Run. All of the other games from the Black Box era were created via Black Box's custom engine. The Run was instead developed with Frostbite, an EA-wide engine that is still in use to this day, albeit a much later version than the one used to make this game. Regardless, it's clear that the engine switch came with a huge upgrade in terms of graphical fidelity. The design is great too. I've never been to San Francisco, but because I haven't let right-wing news infect my brain with worms, I picture San Francisco looking almost exactly like it's portrayed in-game here. I went and checked out the specific area of the city on Street View, and the game doesn't much match reality, but most people who play the game haven't been to San Francisco, so it doesn't matter. It matches the way that the city is perceived. As Jack approaches Nob Hill, Sam calls to let him know that if he doesn't make it to Las Vegas in the top 150, he'll be eliminated from the race. Now begins a 5-mile dash out of San Francisco, with the player needing to evade police, avoid their roadblocks, and above all else, pass other racers. Jack makes his way to the bridge out of town, venturing into the thick fog with police in tight pursuit. Traffic picks up as Jack enters a tunnel at the end of the bridge, and on the other side, he finds construction and a police roadblock, but that doesn't stop him. Your next screen will show you your current stage time. Stages are how this game is partitioned, with stages themselves being further divided into events. Each of the 10 stages represents a distinct geographic region, so the landscape variety in this game is fantastic. The first stage is the West Coast, and completing the downtown San Francisco event leads you into the Altamont Pass Road, but before we can talk about that, we have to talk about the disturbing link between video game development and the children's birthday party industrial complex. Imagine a birthday party for a 7-year-old. You've got paper plates, you've got this cake, you've got a piñata, you've got Caden, who threw up this morning, but his mom let him come anyway. You've got Jackson with an X, who will cry because he didn't get any presents. And you've got the entertainment. That's right, clowns. And what do clowns have to do with video game development? Fucking everything, you idiot. The modern clown, a direct descendant of the rustic fool of ancient Greek theater, is no longer content with being the butt of every joke. They've become more ambitious, infiltrating the games industry and climbing through the ranks, reaching influential positions where they can enact revenge on everyone who ever laughed at them. Worst of all, they're succeeding, which is how we end up with experience systems in racing games. Experience is earned after each event, as well as from performing a variety of in-event actions like eliminating police or passing other racers. Leveling up unlocks new abilities, new cars, and profile icons. Okay dude, I'm gonna focus on unlocking abilities. This is almost antithetical to the cinematic action experience that this game aims to deliver, and it's nonsensical to boot. Like, I don't unlock drafting until I reach level 7. Level 7 unlocks a physical property of the universe. Okay, sure, whatever. You want to unlock abilities? Fine. Include it in the narrative, there's no problem. Don't lock abilities behind a level wall in an action game, and don't ever, under any circumstances, for any reason, ever make drafting something that needs to be unlocked. I shouldn't have to explain this. The only conclusion that I can accept is that some NBA clown put their nasty little rat fingers in the pot and swirled them around until the game started to resemble other AAA games at the time. And it's probably not a coincidence that this system is highly reminiscent of the modern battle pass that plagues virtually every online game today. EA have always been at the cutting edge of the industry in terms of skull-fucking their consumers. Back to Altamont Pass and the beginning of Act 2. Nerds might argue with me and say that Act 2 started when you left the garage in San Francisco, but they're wrong and illiterate, so your first event after leaving the Bay Area requires you to pass 10 other racers. The top right shows you your current stage time and how you're performing relative to the stage leader. I believe that the stage leader is the person on your friends list with the fastest stage time, but I can't confirm this because the servers are shut down and I don't have any friends. The handling in this game is very different from what players would have expected from the series at the time, and I actually like it, but I don't know what word to use to best describe it. Meaty? The handling in this game is meaty? Yeah, I think that's the one. Your Meatmobile doesn't turn as readily as cars did in previous games, but it's probably not realistic either. I am literally just guessing because I've never driven a car at 140 miles per hour because I'm not an abject moron, but I feel like cars don't actually handle this well at this speed. Anyway, look at the environment and landscape here. The attention to detail is astonishing relative to the standard of racing games at the time. This is not simply a representation of a rural highway, it is a recreation. Probably not literally, but you can take any stretch here and say, yeah, that looks like somewhere I've been while trying to go somewhere else. I have a lot of positive things to say about this game, but I think that the environmental design tops everything else. Passing 10 racers and completing the event will obviously move you 10 spots closer to first, and it'll lead you into the next event. On Interstate 580, you'll have to make up time. Time makeup events work exactly like checkpoint races from previous games. You have a certain number of checkpoints to reach and a time allotment in which you need to reach the next one. Passing a checkpoint will extend your time allotment. If you reach the final checkpoint, you've succeeded, and if you run out of time, you have failed. I don't really have any additional commentary on this mode. To talk about environmental pieces again, I-580 is peppered with billboards. I'm going to rate them, and I paid a voice actor to do the readings.
Restful Suites, free Wi-Fi, Skunkies, open 24 hours. Next exit, Highway 58.
The twofer here doesn't take any risks. It's classic, albeit unexciting. I'll give it a 5 out of 10 if Skunkies is a diner, and a 6 out of 10 if Skunkies is a strip club.
Fewer drop calls, light years ahead. The meaning of speed, Zoo Mobile.
Ha, the meaning of speed, because it's a racing game. That's hysterical. 0 out of 10.
Target acquired, Las Vegas. Bullet America Airlines.
Yeah, holy shit. 10 out of 10.
Join my Discord. Follow me on Twitter. Become a patron. Links in the description.
Kinda shitty that someone would shill their socials on this billboard that definitely exists in-game, but the design is nothing short of a work of art. Truly, aesthetic genius. 7 out of 10. Complete the time makeup event to complete the West Coast stage, see your stage time, and move on to the next stage, National Park. Entering in 195th place, your first event will be to gain 8 positions. Unlike the wide highways of the West Coast, the National Park's mountain roads are narrow and winding, serving as an unfortunate distraction from yet another beautiful environment. After a couple more events, you'll come across your first gas station. Gas stations, which are placed infrequently throughout the game, are where you can swap out your car to select something more suitable for the environment. On open highways, a car with high acceleration like the GT500 is a great choice, whereas here in the mountains, only a moron would pick a car like that. The next type of event that you'll face is the battle. In a battle, you have to catch up to and pass the car in front of you, and then hold that lead until time runs out. Each battle requires repeating this song and dance a few times for multiple opponents. This is reminiscent of highway battles and outruns from previous games, and it feels at home here. At the start of the next stage, Death Valley, Sam calls Jack, but nothing really gets said. Honestly, I think this cutscene is here to remind the player that there is a story. This is the part of the game with the fewest story beats, so I'm not surprised that they felt the need to include this. The desert is visually one of the weaker parts of the game, but the gameplay here is fine. There are long stretches of winding highway that ride a satisfying position between too straight and too curvy. Plus there's this sweet-ass drop. The first event's vibe reminds me a lot of the Nevada speed challenges from Pro Street, but thankfully it's a lot easier. One of my commenters once called those races the closest thing a racing game can get to being a horror game, and that pretty much perfectly sums up my sentiment on those races. Fortunately, this one is not like that. The next event is a battle through a dust storm. This one is super sick, with the dust obfuscating your view of what's in front of your car. This game does an awesome job of incorporating environmental effects into the overall aesthetic and even weaving them into the gameplay where possible. In the following event, you'll have your first police interaction since San Francisco. Police don't quite serve the same role in this game that they did in Most Wanted, Carbon, and Undercover. In those games, they're there to be actively engaged with, but usually on your own terms. You're meant to ram them, destroy their cars, and escape the pursuit. While you technically can destroy police in the run, they're a lot sturdier than they previously were. There is no way to escape from them other than completing the event, so destroying them doesn't really serve much benefit. Really, they're meant to harass you while you complete your objective, giving you another factor to keep in mind. Another big difference is that police are now involved in set pieces, with roadblocks being placed at specific points, and some police making scripted maneuvers that are the same on every playthrough. It sounds like a serious downgrade from the police in previous games, but remember, this game is trying to do something entirely different from those games, and it does it well, police included. Approaching the Las Vegas suburbs will trigger another cutscene, in which Jack short circuits because he sees women, I guess. The women are Nikki and Mila, two other racers. They're used to introduce the rival system. I'm hesitant to call it a system because it is so shallow, but I don't really have another word for it, so system it is. Rival races are the closest thing this game has to what one would normally think of when they hear the word race. You start at approximately the same spot, and your goal is to reach a predetermined location before they do. Defeating rivals will also unlock their car for Jack to select at gas stations. At this point, Jack is in 152nd place, so reaching Las Vegas Boulevard before these two is mandatory. The way I see it, rivals were included for one of three reasons. Option 1 is that the devs were trying to further appeal to the competitive drive that inhabits most players in the genre. They're explicitly called rivals, and they're very specific characters that we're meant to compete with. Though this option makes sense, I don't think it's this one. Option 2 is that they were included to augment the narrative. I'll concede that some of the later rivals do exactly this, but I don't think that was the intention, because if it were, the game would have taken this a lot further. More character building, more interaction, more encounters, etc. Option 3, and I think this is the correct one, is that rivals were included because someone higher up said that they should be. Sure, that higher up person may have intended for this to have competitive or narrative elements to it, but those who were tasked with putting it in place did not give a shit. The only thing that separates rivals events from normal events is the fact that you sometimes win a car, and we didn't need all of the extra set dressing for that. We could just periodically unlock cars, exactly like we do with the experience system. The following event takes place in the neighborhood surrounding the Vegas Strip, with police in full pursuit. I just mentioned the scripted police set pieces, and this event makes extensive use of them. The police fly towards you, turning and coming to a stop at the last second, with only just enough time to react. Again, it's the same script every time, so if you fail, it turns into a game of Simon Says. When you do succeed, you enter the next event, where you're prompted to get out of Las Vegas, but it's nowhere near that simple. The pursuit from the last event carries over to this one as you cruise down the strip. You continue to evade roadblocks as you push your way through the city, but soon enough, you'll be left with no place to go. When you hit the roadblock, you're busted. Police surround Jack, guns drawn. He's in the process of being arrested when a few street racers drive by. Seizing the distraction, Jack overpowers the arresting officer and throws him to the ground. Jack takes off on foot, and a few officers give chase. Jack ultimately evades them by escaping over a fence, but on the other side, a vicious dog lunges at him. Jack tosses the dog aside and manages to break into a nearby building just in time to avoid the dog's next strike. Jack grabs a souvenir and heads back into the street, where he is immediately spotted by the police because no shit, you were just there, you know that's where they are. Jack dodges incoming traffic before sprinting to evade and eventually sliding under a semi-trailer. Finally, Jack has escaped and Stage 3 is complete. Stage 4 is Desert Hills, representing the stretch between Las Vegas and the Rocky Mountains. Before the second event, we get a profile from Marcus Blackwell. Marcus comes from a connected Chicago family. His passion for cars is funded by his uncle, who calls all the shots. Beyond winning, Marcus's primary motivation is to take Jack out of the race, permanently. Dun dun dun! The eagle-eyed among you may remember Marcus as one of the guys overseeing Jack's execution in the intro. Not a great dude. The event opens with a cutscene in which Marcus uber brake checks Jack, and then he's just gone. You get back to completing events and don't interact with him again for quite a while. Jack once again encounters police, and with the police presence intensifying, Sam advises Jack to head into the mountains to escape. The stage's final event involves doing exactly that. Stage 5 is the Rocky Mountains, and it's awesome. Again, this game did a kick-ass job with environmental effects, in this case, the snow. The landscape looks great, and the roads are even icy, reducing tire grip. After a couple of events, we get a profile for Cesar de Leon. Cesar made some bad choices growing up on the streets of LA. The love of a good woman and the impending arrival of their firstborn have made Cesar change his ways. In the run with his two brothers, he's seeking a chance to give his family a better life. That's actually super sympathetic. I don't even know if I want to win anymore. This is another rival race against all three De Leon brothers. They all drive El Caminos, which is super tight, but yeah, fucking right are they keeping pace with a Lamborghini. It was during this race that I started to strongly suspect that passing other drivers is itself a scripted event. Repeating the race a few times, it became obvious that I was able to pass each of the brothers at approximately the same spot each time. If I did manage to pass one early, they chased me down like the Terminator, and it was only when I reached the pass point that they finally backed off. Again, this game is trying to be an action game more than a racing game, so I really don't mind a curated experience like this. The final event of the stage fundamentally changed my perspective on what racing games can be. I'm not going to spoil it by talking, just watch. Yeah, holy shit. Stage 6 features a few different locales. Commerce City, Colorado, the Nebraskan Plains, the Badlands National Park, and the Minnesotan countryside. I actually have a friend who lives near where the last event in this stage takes place, so I reached out to him to get some footage of the area, but he was busy. Stage 6 doesn't provide much to talk about. The landscapes are, of course, nice, and they match their real-life counterparts, but the only real story-relevant beat is the rival race against Calvin Garrett, and even that one isn't really noteworthy, except for the fact that he'll come back later. Stage 6 is really just a slowed-down beat to give the player the chance to relax after the Rocky Mountains, which I'm fine with. Variable pacing is good design. Stage 7 represents the Chicago approach, starting in rural Wisconsin and getting increasingly suburban as you approach the city. Entering Chicagoland, Sam calls to let Jack know that the mob has a welcoming committee waiting for him downtown. He gets barely a moment to process that information when Marcus reappears, shooting a hole through Jack's window. Unharmed, Jack manages to make it to Chicago in 50th place, narrowly avoiding elimination. The next event is another rival race, this one against Marcus, and if you win, you get to tear off his mole, and you can't prove me wrong because this one is impossible to win. Much like getting busted in Vegas, a scripted event derails the race, with Jack's car being T-boned by a mobster. Jack leaps out of the car and flees into a nearby building, pursued by mobsters. He reaches the roof and leaps from one building to another with a helicopter looking on. The helicopter opens fire on Jack as he leaps to yet another building. Jack makes another leap and falls into the adjacent alleyway. Though he's safe from the helicopter, a police cruiser immediately turns into the alley. Jack hides behind a dumpster, and when the opportunity presents itself, he ambushes the driver and steals the car. You're now in control of Jack as he navigates the Chicago streets in a police interceptor. The helicopter spots Jack again and gives chase. In addition to dodging traffic, Jack now needs to stay out of the helicopter's spotlight to avoid being fired on. With limited overhead cover, Jack needs to survive the 3.5-mile drive out of the city. As Jack nears the city's edge, the helicopter fires on a tanker, causing an explosion that forces Jack off the road. Jack falls unconscious, and when he wakes up, he finds himself hanging upside down. He frees himself from his seatbelt just in time to notice that the car came to a rest on a train track and that there is a train coming right for him. Jack kicks out the window and escapes the vehicle just before the collision, bringing the stage to an end. At the start of Stage 8, you're still in downtown Chicago, and you're tasked with getting back in the race. This entails retreading a lot of road that you've already driven, which actually kind of bummed me out. Chicago is an awesome city, and I love seeing it digitized. Fortunately, they did a great job of that in the next event, Lakeshore Drive. You've got ugly-ass Soldier Field, McCormick Place, the Museum of Science and Industry, even more subtle things like the Jackson Park Harbors. The route of this event follows Lakeshore Drive's path with surprising accuracy. Like the Nebraska event earlier, this one is just used to slow the game's pace back down, but that didn't stop them from doing a lot with this level anyway. Unfortunately, all good things eventually come to an end, and at the start of the next event, you're in Ohio. I actually plan most of my days around making sure that I don't accidentally end up in Ohio because I've been there and it sucks, and now Jack, still trying to escape from the mob, has to drive through fucking Cleveland. The next two events play just like the game's opening sequence. The mob is trying to shoot Jack and ram him off the road, he's trying to escape, and he's surrounded by garbage. The following event is more of the same, but now the helicopter is involved as well. This one has a cool tunnel segment and then an exploding train yard, and at the end of it, Jack literally rams the helicopter out of the sky because Jack Rourke is a badass. Jack tells Sam that he needs a new car, and she sends him to 4th and Industrial to meet a man named Yuri. Yuri is weird as fuck, but when Jack name drops Sam, he gets Jack set up with a supercar. Stage 9 starts in rural Pennsylvania, which looks identical to rural Wisconsin. On one hand, that's true, the areas look the same, but on the other hand, I don't think it would have been a challenge to differentiate them from one another aesthetically. Rural PA could, and I think should, have been an Appalachian-inspired environment that would have been a lot cooler. Jack re-encounters Mila, this time without Nikki, and Jack has to battle her through Garrett State Forest, which isn't much of a forest in this game. I initially assumed that this was a matter of technical limitations, so I suspended my disbelief and told myself that yeah, this is what forests look like. But then the next event, the last of Stage 9, looks a lot more like a forest. And then the first event of Stage 10, you don't even have to suspend your disbelief, so I don't know why Garrett State is so sparse. Stage 10 represents the final approach to New York City. Jack has passed nearly 200 drivers, putting him in 10th place as he nears the greatest city in the world. In Newark Bay, New Jersey, you have another rival race with the De Leon clan. Or you would, but the police managed to take out 2 of the brothers, leaving you and Cesar to fight for 3rd place. And after that, a fight with Calvin Garrett for 2nd, leading us into the finale. The final race into New York City is, of course, a head-to-head matchup with Marcus. I gotta be honest, I don't understand Marcus's motivations here. Jack owes the mob a lot of money. He entered this race to win a lot of money. Marcus, a member of the mob, wants Jack to not have a lot of money? Spare me with any bullshit about sending a message or disrespect or whatever. There was no thought put into whether or not Marcus's motivations make sense. The city is great. I mean, yeah, that's New York. The game really committed to the details, and the experience is significantly better off for it. Honestly, given that they were going for this cinematic action game, I don't know if the game would have worked if they didn't spring for highly detailed environments because they add so much immersion. If I were grading components of this game and could only give one A+, it would go to the environment design, for sure. A few miles into the race, Marcus again tries to shoot Jack, forcing our protagonist into an underground tunnel. The tunnel leads to subway tunnels, with trains actively using the tracks. As trains go from one station to the next, Jack has to avoid them by alternating tracks, taking service tunnels, and at one point, driving on a banked wall inches from the incoming train. Conveniently, the tunnel spits Jack out right behind Marcus, and the race is back on. The duo reach the dock, home of the finish line, with only a fraction of a mile remaining. Jack pulls ahead, Marcus totals his car, rest in pieces bozo, and Jack drives into the warehouse, victorious. In the post-climax scene, Marcus walks into a restaurant, and look at this. There's 4 dudes here dressed in all black, and it's an Italian restaurant. This is clearly a setup by the mob, right? I'm not tripping? Apparently I am, because no setup here. Sam says she fixed your problem and they won't be bothering you again. And like I said, I thought this was a mob setup, so Sam leading with this was kind of a counter twist that hit me extra hard. If this was deliberate, it was legitimately brilliant. Sam gives you the key to a deposit box with your cut of the winnings. Much like Squid Game, the run ends with a contrived sequel hook, but unlike Squid Game, this one didn't get a sequel. Technically, Season 2 of Squid Game isn't out yet, and it's not even really relevant. I just wanted to talk about Squid Game. I fucking love that show. Did you know that Cho Sang-woo went to SNU? I don't know why no one ever mentions that. In the denouement, Jack is being chased by police through the desert when he gets a call from Sam, showing that they all lived happily ever after. The run gets a lot of criticism for its length, and while I can't say that I think that that's an unfair critique because the 3 to 4 hour runtime is short, I also think that it's levied by those who aren't interested in evaluating the game for what it is, only for what they wanted it to be, which I get, but like, come on. Yes, Most Wanted was awesome, but Black Box was clearly interested in trying other things, and they executed those other things extremely well. This game very much feels like playing an action movie, so I don't think it's totally unreasonable for the playtime to be closer to the runtime of an action movie than the playtime of other Need for Speed games. Not to excuse it entirely, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as it's been made. Speaking of other Need for Speed games, now is as good of a time as any to piss off everyone by updating my ranking of Need for Speed games that I've covered. Y'all are gonna hate this one, but here it is. I have it at 2nd, behind Pro Street and ahead of Carbon. For good measure, I'll throw the first Underground game on the list because there's no fucking way I'm covering that snooze fest. Leave all the hate comments you want, old man. The game aged like hot garbage and you're out of touch. Y'all are always asking me how I get these games on PC, given that EA no longer sells them, and I would love to tell you all about how ridiculously easy it is, but I can't. On YouTube. Perhaps if you joined my Discord server, you would find that information. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Discord is also where I post updates on my video progress so that everyone can bully me for being lazy, and where we post pictures of our pets when we aren't busy discussing the 1995 Universal Pictures film, Balto. Link in the description. Shout out to the patrons, by Eric's, Ryan Mikesel, and XXX_spicy_balls_69_XXX. Y'all are real ones, you already know. I'll soon be releasing my first director's commentary video, and only you 3 get to watch it. I'm going to talk about the Most Wanted video, about what inspired certain things I missed or got wrong, maybe some musing about video creation process, just whatever comes to mind. If that interests anyone else, links to the Patreon and channel membership will also be in the description. Speaking of links in the description, I'll also have a link to a poll that you can vote in to influence the direction of my content moving forward. The way the poll works is that it will randomly show you 2 options. You'll select the one that you prefer, and then it'll come up with a ranking of all of the options based on how each one performs. It will let you vote an unlimited number of times, so don't try to finish it, just vote as many times as you want. You can also submit your own ideas, so knock yourself out with it.
Anyway, thanks for watching.